We're going to give a special recognition.
Do we want to do the consent agenda first?
No. We decided to do this instead. Okay. Jamie Campbell, going to get an award.
An award?
An award. 23 Municipal Clerks Week proclamation.
It is Clerks Week, or this week. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Would you like to say anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Now we can call the meeting to order.
All right.
Okay. Barry?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just go over the consent agenda item briefly. Reflective of the number of meetings you've been having lately, items 1 through 7 are all approval meeting minutes.
And that's not even all of them.
That's only all, and that's only from the end of March through the
Yeah.
end of April.
Yeah.
Other business. And these are all, as I say, special meeting, closed session, and regular meetings during that time period. That's items 1 through 7. Going over to the second page of the agenda, item 8 on the consent agenda is a resolution approving the city's water supply plan. This is an annual report that's prepared by staff that addresses information related to our utility system with water, wastewater, and changes over the course of the past year through that system. Things such as size of the system, maintenance programs, usage, everything.
I think that works.
It doesn't record you. Hey, Richard, I'm sure you're fine with it. All right.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
Okay.
So even though this report's prepared annually, once every 5 years is a requirement that council has to adopt it, and it's then forwarded to the state DEQ. So you have this year's report before you for approval. Somewhat similar to that, item 9 is a resolution approving the city water shortage response plan. This is it's only prepared once every 5 years. And this report addresses the various actions that are taken at different stages of drought designations. And these have been in place for some years now. But again, this also is submitted to the state upon your approval. Item 10 is a repair, an item dealing with a repair needed at the wastewater treatment plant. And I've asked Bill if he would briefly address you on this because he can give you a much more accurate description than I can.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So you may recall that one of our CIP workshop meetings, we discussed this briefly. This project is at the Aeration Basin at the Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Yeah.
This is a much-needed maintenance item that's going to help make it to our Charlotte Water Agreement date, which is still a few years out. This is impacting, the system is being impacted heavily by solids, which is causing the treatment process to not be as effective. So this is going to help us get back where we're being effective and get us through to the end of our the life cycle of our treatment plant. So if you have any questions about that project or anything, I'll be happy to answer.
I remember talking about it at the meeting, but I looked and I couldn't find it on the CIP itself.
Because it was not a CIP project in the past. It was kind of something that's come up recently. We've had worked with some engineers to try to get an assessment of the system, and it's needed. It's kind of come up as a surprise for us
An
and
unpleasant
service
one.
that we need.
Yes.
It's one of those situations where in the past 20 years, no staff can recall us ever doing this kind of maintenance on that basin. So it's certainly a
And before you leave, with the water shortage response plan, every 5 years, has it been updated? I thought it only been updated since 2016, which would be more than 5 years.
So if no one thinks anything needs to be changed as far as what's outlined, we just expect it throughout, it will remain the same. So that was probably the last big revision. I did change in it where it said, like city hall, I changed it to city works, and there was just one other thing I noted at the end. But nobody sees any reason to change the steps needed at each throughout the state.
So it's
Okay.
adopted every 5 years, not potentially not edited.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Bill. Anybody have any questions for Bill? We good?
One final consent agenda item, item number 11. This is a revised ordinance authorizing the closing of South Main Street and sale, possession, consumption of alcoholic beverages during the Friday Night Live concert series. The change that's added to this ordinance compared to the earlier ordinance is that this does include the potential closing of South Main Street between the railroad track and Myrtle, and also the use of airline for the concession during those events. To the previous ordinance, which was related to just the park property, and this is intended as a backup option to address situations like we had last week, where the amount of rain Thursday and early Friday prohibited use of the upper field for the concert, whereas the weather cleared during the day. If we had had time to work out the arrangements for holding it in the street, it could have been done that night, but this will give us that backup as an option going forward. So those are the consent agenda items. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Thank you, Barry. Okay. We got signed up for public comment. Anybody?
Do you want to do the invocation?
Yes.
Go
Pledge
through that,
allegiance.
start the meeting.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that first. Okay. All right. Jim,
Yes, sure.
Jason,
Yeah.
Martha, do the pledge.
Let us bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings that you have bestowed on our city. We thank you for our new city manager, Miles Braswell, and we ask that you give him the wisdom and judgment to run our city in a way that we continue to improve on the foundation that we built. We ask that you give us wisdom and guidance to conduct the business of the city tonight for the benefit of our residents, and we ask all of this, as always, in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have several people.
You set the agenda.
Yes,
Charlie, we need to.
Here, right here.
we got.
Resolution, though.
Miles Braswell, yeah.
Yep, we're gonna recognize it.
Yeah, we're gonna recognize Miles.
We're going to do the municipal clerk week proclamation first. Does he have the municipal
He
clerk week
did. He recognized her.
He already did that.
Better ready. Yeah. Yeah. Miles? Want to come on up here?
And for the record, Miles is our new
City manager.
city manager. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Well,
The people
but
in
the people in the audience might not.
They know Miles Braswell. He played ball for me years ago.
Now I owe Parks $100.
So did Corky too.
What do we have?
But anyway, Miles, welcome you to Belmont as our city manager. We look forward to our time with you and spending good hours of discipline and just, doing the good things.
So thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm truly delighted to be standing here before you all today. To even be considered as the Belmont City Manager is just beyond what I could imagine. So the culmination of this dream really just turned into reality tonight. And as you all know, I am from Belmont. This is my hometown, and I'm just excited that I can be here just to be a part of helping you all build the vision that you have for the city. When I speak about Belmont, I think about like an old friend. You know, when you've had seen an old friend for a while, you see that friend, you walk up to them, you kind of know who that person is, and you pick right back up right at that moment, and that's what I kind of feel like right now is that this is just an old friend that I'm coming home to. So it's really renewing to establish that connection again. So thank you, Belmont, for the welcome. And I promise to do my best, and I pray that I live up to your expectations along with the citizens of Belmont. For all the city staff that are out here or at home, I appreciate you dedicating your working lives to provide excellent services to our citizens. So I thank you. I look forward to working with each and every one of the staff out there. And I hope that you accept me in as part of your Belmont family. So I look forward to really looking forward to working. Thank you, Interim Manager Webb, for serving in the role through this transition. City Attorney Parks Wilson, I really look forward to working with you. I know that you've got a lot of experience in multiple managers, so I really look forward to working with you and learning through this process. To my wife Erin, my 3 kids, Basin, and Valley out there, thank you for always loving and supporting me at all times. Mayor Martin, Mayor Pro Tem Turner, Councilwoman Stowe, Councilman Heffron, Councilman Sellinger, and Councilman Sook. It's my pleasure to serve as your manager. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
There we go. Yes, it was about 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you. All right, 1, 2, 3, smile. Stop point. Or else they will pass. You're welcome.
All right, we have several people that have signed up for public comment.
You want to set
Um,
the
yeah,
set
I'll-
the agenda first?
Motion to set the agenda.
Second. Good.
All in
All in
favor?
favor, say aye.
And I think we need to move to approve the consent agenda as well, following that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Public comment. First person signed up is Amanda member.
My name is Amanda Merrick, and I live on 104 Murray Road. As you know, several citizens appeared before you at the April 3rd council meeting talked about concerns with the proposed Henry Chapel development and asked that Belmont follow its own ordinances, specifically Belmont Land Development Ordinance Chapters 15 and 16 and its watershed ordinance. Regarding a major development application, Chapter 15.5 states a sketch plan along with an environmental survey to the planning department shall be submitted for a non-binding review. The developer has not completed the environmental survey. The developer simply submitted a topographic map of the site, which should not be accepted as an environmental survey. The proposed development is within a critical watershed area and a protected watershed area. According to NC Department of Environmental Quality, a critical area is the area adjacent to a water supply tank or reservoir where the risk associated with pollution is greater than risk associated with pollution from the remaining portion of the watershed. A protected area is the area adjoining and upstream of the critical area in a water supply in which protection measures are required. Chapter 16.2b of your land development ordinance states all land located within the designated water supply watershed protection district as shown on the official Belmont watershed protection map shall comply with all provisions of this ordinance regarding watershed protection. The watershed protection provisions of this ordinance shall take precedence over all other provisions of this ordinance with regard to density, open space dedication, and built-upon areas. At the April meeting, Council directed planning staff to look into the environmental survey requirement of the ordinance. At the April 27th planning and zoning meeting, however, the planning staff presented information regarding an environmental impact statement. This is not the same thing as an environmental survey, nor is it what concerned citizens brought up at the April 3rd City Council meeting. Again, an environmental survey is required by Belmont Land Development Ordinance Chapter 15.5 for all major developments. We again request that Belmont City Council follow its own ordinance by requiring an environmental survey and following the guidelines in the watershed ordinance. Please look into the issues surrounding the proposed Henry Chapel development. We do not seek to stop development simply because we do not want more neighbors. We are bringing up these issues to prevent future problems that could impact Belmont and harm the communities where we live.
Thank you, Amanda. Next, we have signed up to speak Dana Markser.
Mayor, also thank you for hearing me. I'm Dana Markser. I live at 20 West Woodrow Avenue in Belmont. I want to briefly share my experience with the Belmont Water Department, and I have some recommendations to consider for better serving the residents of Belmont. In January, according to the Water Department, I had an intermittent leak in my house, which caused my water bill to be over $600. My father was in hospice. I was in the plan of taking care of him, and so I didn't notice it until the second month, at which point over $1,200 had been drafted. So I was on auto draft, and then auto draft. I fixed the leak, which reversed the charges, which I was very grateful for. The water department would not return the money. They stated they never reverse payments when auto drafts are made. They would only give me a credit, so I've effectively prepaid my water bill for the year, which wasn't my plan, but I have no recourse to recoup the funds that were auto drafted out. I asked the water department to remove auto draft from my accounts. I have to, my house is to have an apartment on the side. My March bill for the second line came in with an auto draft message. I then asked again for the water department to please remove my accounts from auto draft. Since I had been told auto drafts are never reversed because I couldn't get my money back, I assume my March bill was already drafted and auto draft would cease on the next bill cycle. Late April, my water got to the top. For not paying my March bill. Again, I had never been told that the March bill would have to draft first. I was told that never happened. So I had no water, and I had a huge credit to the water department. They also have refused to return penalties for having not paid my March bill, which clearly says it was audited. So, enough details. I have two recommendations. First, I think we should cap the amount that the water department is authorized to draft from a resident's checking. While it was very inconvenient for me, it could be catastrophic for other residents if their checking account just gets wiped out and they have no recourse to get the money back. Two, there needs to be some reasonable evaluation of these situations to better serve our residents. Enforcing penalty fees when there's a reasonable doubt of whether the resident is at fault should err on the side of the resident. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Dana. All right. Next we have signed up to speak Janice Harper. Please to the street.
I had a knee replacement. I move slow. I sent all of you an email. I went ahead and printed this out with some better pictures. And I live in downtown Belmont on Cedar Street. And I had asked, I had a gentleman next door to me that's never cut his bushes. And Lindsay helped me constantly with him. But anytime he mows his grass, it's only because he's gotten something from Lindsay. So I was told that maybe y'all could look at the covenants and maybe change them. He's lived beside me for 10 years, and we only spoke twice. He stays in his house. It's kind of makes me a little nervous, but I really need some help. It's gotten totally out of hand. I mean, that's the front of his house. Now, the picture I gave you in the beginning, the first picture, is when he moved in. I haven't seen his house in 9 years. And I've got mice now. The backyard is incredible. I've got mice. I called an exterminator. He said, "You're never going to get rid of mice until somebody takes care of that mess next door." He has an abandoned car in the back, and Lindsay has him put a cover over it. He puts it halfway so she can see it, and then he takes it off. He's very confined, which kind of makes me nervous. But any help that I could get, I would appreciate. The second time I talked to him, his mother was there, and he was cutting a keyhole for his mother to get through the front door. She wouldn't come in, evidently. So I told him, I have some hedge clippers, electric, I'll be glad to give them to you. And he said, "I'm fine." So after that, I just stay away from him. And it's not just me. He doesn't have anything to do with anybody on the street. It's just, that's okay if he wants to live by himself and not have, social contact. But you can mow your grass and cut your shrubs and abide by the rules. And he's not doing that. So that's all I got to say. If anybody can give me some help on it or help Lindsay, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know Lindsay had emailed us to discuss some of these things. Did you have any further information?
Currently, as the ordinance He has received a violation for the grass in the car and the back. But as far as the front portion goes, there's not enough specification in the actual ordinance that would allow me to require him to cut it back enough to where he sees visually. But we're definitely working on the surrounding area with the grass and the property on the side of the house as well.
Do you have any latitude, if it can be demonstrated, that there are mice or things emanating from the property? Does the ordinance not speak to that if it's a nuisance property?
It does to an extent. It speaks of any type of garments or anything like that. And that would go along with the grass in the backyard and any kind of other overgrowth of that nature, which is something we're addressing as well. But as far as the front portion of it, or what the picture you're showing, I can only ask you to do so much that a ordinance will allow me.
Yeah.
Isn't there latitude if they're habitual offenses?
There is, and he's received several warnings on things of that nature.
But you're familiar with this pretty much.
I know in the past you've drafted some revised ordinances to clear up some gray areas. Is that something you consider?
It's something that I'm working on.
Okay.
I've been doing some research on some surrounding areas to see what they have that would mitigate that for us. So it's something I'm collaborating.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to that then. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay. We have an audit presentation. Kelly.
Yes, we have Kelly Gooderham with Martin Starnes and Associates here to present the FY 2022 audit report.
As long as it's not my technical difficulty, then I'm good.
job, Jamie.
Okay, so now that we're on track, my name is Kelly Cunningham. I'm the Senior Audit Manager for the City of Belmont's fiscal year 22 audit. We've prepared the following PowerPoint to present what we feel to be some of the more important topics of the city's fiscal year 22 audit. Your report has been submitted and approved by the LGC. We have issued a clean, unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that we can provide, which basically means that we found no material misstatements that would otherwise be misleading to the users of the financial statements. So first, we'll show a comparison of total revenues and expenditures for fiscal year 23. As you can see, there was an overall increase in revenues of roughly $2.7 million, which was primarily due to an increase in your ad valorem tax revenues, as well as your unrestricted revenues. There was also an increase in your overall expenditures of $151,000, primarily due to an increase in general government and public safety expenditures, as well as a decrease in debt service for an overall net increase in your total expenditures. Next, we have a 3-year comparison of your general fund balance. As you can see, there was an overall increase of $3.9 million, which was primarily due to transfers in from other funds, in addition to an overall increase in revenues and a smaller increase in expenditures. So here's how internally you all calculate your available fund balance. First, we start with your total fund balance of $14.3 million, less your non-spendables of $26,000, less your stabilization by state statute of $4.9 million, less your other restricted fund balance of $625,000, and less your working capital internal fund balance policy of $4.3 million, to arrive at your available fund balance of $4.4 million, which was an overall decrease in available fund balance over the prior year of $544,000. It is noted that this is your internal calculation of available fund balance, which differs slightly from the LGC's calculation, which excludes obviously your internal fund balance policy as well as other restricted fund balance. Then we have your available fund balance as a percentage of expenditures and transfers to other funds, which decreased primarily due to an overall increase in your expenditures as well as a decrease in your available fund balance. So now we'll go through your top 3 general fund revenues and expenditures. First, we have your ad valorem tax revenues, which increased $782,000 or 8%, which was just due to an overall increase in your collections over the prior year. Then we have your unrestricted intergovernmental revenues, which also increased around $832,000 or 18%, which was due to an increase in your local option sales tax distribution from the state, which was seen pretty commonly around local governments in North Carolina. And then your sales and services decreased around $4,600, which is less than 1% and considered comparable to the prior year. Next, we have your top 3 general fund expenditures. Your public safety expenditures increased around $768,000 or 13%, which was mostly due to an increase in your salaries and benefits, as well as a few smaller line items that increased as well. And your transportation expenditures increased around $66,000 or 4%, which was due to an increase in your salaries and benefits, as well as expenditures related to leases regarding your GASB 87 implementation. Then your general government expenditures increased $642,000 or 38%, which was due to an increase in salaries and related benefits, as well as the grant match for the North Carolina Commerce Grant that was passed down to a local business. Some highlights within your enterprise water sewer fund. Cash flow from operations ended at a positive $2.7 million. Your total net position ended at $49 million. Your unrestricted net position, which is the equivalent to your unassigned fund balance within the general fund, ended at $2.2 million, with an overall positive change in net position of $2.5 million. So starting a couple years ago, the LGC is now requiring us to present some pertinent topics of each audit during the audit presentation, one of which is your quick ratio for your water sewer fund. The LGC is normally concerned with a quick ratio of anything less than 1, and although it did decrease slightly over the prior year, it's still, more than 1, so adequate according to LGC standards. The decrease overall was, as you can see from the chart, due to an overall decrease in your current assets and a slight increase in your current liabilities. Some more information that the LGC is requiring us to present to the board are your general performance indicators. There were statutory violations disclosed in the footnotes, some of which were included in your audit findings. There were audit findings noted, 5 material weaknesses and 1 significant deficiency. These items are required to be responded to the LGC and signed by a majority of the board and submitted within 60 days of this audit presentation. And are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
I hate to ask this again. I asked this the last time, but I'm just still would like some further insight into the decision to designate the Downtown Belmont Development Association as a component unit, which was made prior to the last fiscal year audit that we discussed a few months ago, but the structure of the board has never changed since its inception in 2015. So again, to the extent we can provide clarity as to why in the last few years we've decided to include it as a component unit requiring its own audit versus what had happened in previous years when nothing has really changed in the structure of the organization.
Sure. So each year for auditing standards, we are required to inquire for each audit whether or not there are any additional component units noted since the prior fiscal year. Ultimately, this is the responsibility of management and finance to assess and identify. And it was brought to our attention in fiscal year 21. So with the help of Jared in finance and per auditing standard guidance, we determined that due to the structure of the board of DBDA, the city has control over said board. And so by default, following those guidance, they were deemed a component unit.
So did the answer that you got to the question you asked about this change? Like, did Jared provide you a different answer to that question than you had previously received?
No, we inquired about it, and until we went through that checklist, which is developed by the auditing standards, we were both kind of on the brink of saying no, but because the city has control over the board, that by default deems them a component unit. So if you have fiscal control over an entity, then they are deemed a component unit. And there are other requirements or rather milestones to meet for that, but that was the one hook.
So was that not disclosed to you previously, or?
No, sir.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I was just curious. Whenever you guys pull the samples of the transactions, you base them from the various general ledgers. Is that correct? Do you guys
Correct.
monitor the cash outflows? So I guess where my question is were those cash outflows ever tested prior to 2021, and then they were just deemed not material? Like, was there ever a previous conversation as to should the DBDA, I see this transaction of X amount of thousands of dollars, should we include this in the material or as a material component for the audit?
Well, the majority of the disbursements are probably out of the general fund, and if that's the case, our auditing procedures would not necessarily catch something like that. They're just not designed that way. So if we had by some chance chosen an invoice that or a disbursement of some kind and looked at the details behind it to indicate that it was to DBDA, then we would have questioned it. But nothing arose during our auditing procedures that came to light.
Thank you.
If we could go back to the water sewer ratio slide. There it is. If you know, yeah, I mean, you said the reason the ratio went down is because the assets are valued at less and the expenses increased. Well, that's yes. Even even I can see that. If you know what contributed to the decrease in the value of the assets.
Well, so I did look at it briefly before this evening, and actually the majority of what occurred was your restricted cash is not included in your current assets, and your restricted cash increased a pretty good amount. So the fact that your cash overall went down, not a great amount, but it went down, and then your restricted cash, which is not included in that ratio, increased. From what I could gather, it was primarily that.
I had a question about the general fund balance. I forget what slide it was.
3-year comparison?
So there was the one chart that was showing from 21 to that one, the $3.9 million increase, and then I think it was on the next slide where you show the net change in position of a minus 544.
Yes, so that's your available fund balance.
Okay, can you just help me reconcile what's going on here?
So obviously your total fund balance increased, and your stabilization by state statute, I believe, also increased, but I don't have that in front of me. I apologize. And I don't remember. I'll be honest. I may need to get back to you on that, on the ins and outs between the comparison with your stabilization by state statute and then your working capital. So your working capital is actually based on an overall budget. Is that right, Jared? So if your budget increased, I think it's 20%. Is that correct? So if your overall budget increased, then that amount will increase as well. So if that's the case, then your overall available fund balance will decrease because there's more money.
Okay.
Joe, I want to revisit the Main Street question for just 1 second. The Belmont Tourism Board, I guess I'm just trying to contrast and understand the two. The Belmont Tourism Board has always been identified as a component unit.
And it always will be because of their funding source.
Okay, so, and they basically don't have the financial logistical tail. I mean, they don't draw money out of the general fund as a rule.
Correct.
Whereas the DBDA does. So if we've got money flowing out of the DBDA from the general fund, I guess what I understood you to say is that your program was not set up to identify that?
No, that is part of one of the stipulations. So if DBDA is primarily funded through the city, then by default they would be considered a component unit. So there's fiscal control, there's financial control. So if DBDA had debt, and ultimately if they dissolve tomorrow and the city is on the hook for that debt, that would be a component unit. So there's a lot of different specifications as to whether something is deemed a component unit, but for DBDA specifically, we looked at contributions from the city, and we looked at other contributions that DBDA receives, and the city was not fully funding or majority funding the DBDA, and that was not the ultimate deciding factor. It was the fact that you all control the board, because you appoint the Main Street Board, and thus far DBDA. So if at some point you guys want to readdress your bylaws and change something like that, then we can naturally reassess that component unit determination.
All right, well, let me just follow up. If one of the triggers is that we appoint the board, essentially acting in some sort of oversight capacity, doing so, that hasn't changed since inception of the DBDA. So why was that trigger, I guess, not activated sooner?
I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that. As your auditors, we inquire every year, and unless something else comes about to where we are made aware of a possible component unit. We unfortunately, we do a lot of checks and balances. We read your board minutes throughout the year. We obviously look at your GL, but unless you've got a specific line item that specifically says contributions to DBDA, we would not necessarily catch that in our normal auditing procedures because they're not designed as such. And if I remember right, the contributions that you all made to DBDA in fiscal year 21 were not substantial. So because they're coming from the general fund, that is not necessarily something that we would catch. They're just not designed that way.
Thank you, Kelly. Anybody else have anything to tell me?
No, just that it seems to me, and of course I'm not an accountant, I'm a math person, that part of this would be whether your finance director at that time, when inquiry was made, if that finance director said something. So that to me is a big piece of this as well, not just the auditor part of it.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that.
I know. I don't. It's not a question. Don't worry. I know. Kelly had mentioned this response letter, which is that something we need to sign right now because it has been drafted. So. Right. Yes. Yes. I just want to make sure we're on top of that while we're all here.
Just for clarification, since other than Charlie, I'm the longest running one here, we have never, to my knowledge, had a clean audit because we don't have the staff to have the checks and balances. So just for the audience's information, we're still in, I would understand, are in good shape, so to speak. It's just that we don't have a big staff to cross-reference or doing checks and balances. Is that correct?
It is correct. However, finance has added additional staff over the years, and they have properly segregated a lot of duties that they were not otherwise able to do so prior to, I'm going to give him a pat on the back prior to Jared. You know, so having a deputy finance director and a finance director in addition to accounting, so things like that will definitely help with, you know, late audits, segregation of duties, and pretty much everything. So.
Okay, thank you.
Something for us to aspire towards.
Well, and Jared has put a lot of that in place for the future with our action plan that we submitted to the LGC. So, and again, considering Jared did the Lord's work for the past 3 audits.
Someone's work.
I'm pretty sure he knows what not to do in this situation. Yes. So, again, Jared, we appreciate that, or I definitely do.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda, we have a public hearing for consideration of entering into an installment financing contract for construction of the recreation center. All right. Motion?
Motion go into public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With the audit situation now addressed, we're in the position to go forward with the financing for the recreation center, and Jared's going to give you a little intro onto this on this item prior to opening up for any public comment.
We don't have any slides for it. No.
So basically, this public hearing is just to notify the public of our intent to go into a financing agreement to fund the recreation center. I guess if you've been in attendance to any or listening in on any of our meetings for the past year, you've known that that's kind of been an issue. But this public hearing is an opportunity for the public to comment or express concerns about the city going into a debt financing agreement for an asset. So I'll just leave it at that.
I don't know where the public comment sheet for it went, so if there's, just ask if there's any public comment.
Is there any public comment?
Speak and be heard.
Or forever hold your peace.
Doesn't appear to be any.
I will move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And just in follow up, obviously there will be follow up action on this once we have financing proposals to bring to you for approval.
Do we have interest already? Have we put some feelers out in regards
Yes,
to
we've
it?
already sent out the RFP. We've got several responses. We've set out RFPs for both 15-year term and a 20-year term. We've gotten a lot of feedback. Once this meeting is closed and we sign that FDIC letter to go along with our LGC debt application, which will happen tomorrow, that will put us on the LGC debt agenda for June, for the June 6th meeting. So we'll probably have, Kevin and I will probably both attend that virtually, but there probably will be questions given to us, and we've been meeting with the LGC regularly through this process. They've been asking questions. We've been able to fulfill and satisfy their requests thus far, and I expect them pickups next month.
Riddle me this. If I know we had talked before about once we're up to date on the audits, are we still on the naughty list or have we been removed?
We are, once we submit that that signed FDIC letter.
Okay.
The unit assistance list.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I prefer unit assistance list.
Well, I didn't know the technical term, so I didn't want to misspeak.
UAM?
Yes.
We have a resolution authorizing the negotiation of an installment financing contract and providing for certain.
Do we have any more questions for Jared, though, before we move on?
Yeah.
Well, this is related to that.
Okay.
Yeah, he's done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jared.
So anybody want to go ahead and,
I'll move to approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have on the agenda, resolution authorizing the consideration of a financial installment agreement.
No, you already did that in the next one.
It's the Carolina Riverside.
Oh, yeah, number 5, I'm sorry. Public hearing for Del Webb, Carolina Riverside Development.
I'll
Motion.
go into public hearing.
I'll
Second.
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. Let's try it again. Good evening, Council. This request is entitled ZA 2020.02A for Carolina Riverside. Specifically, this is an amendment request to the approved conditional rezoning for the intent of signage. And the full property owners are listed in your packet. The property's zone general residential conditional district, and the applicant who is here tonight, if you do have any questions, is Melissa Oliver on behalf of Pulte Home Group. This request is for your consideration of relief from the Land Development Code's standards, specifically for installation of an enhanced signing package for the Del Webb community. And really briefly going over the request, the applicant has submitted a master sign program, not in its entirety, but for generalized locations of the vision for signage throughout the proposed development. Their vision includes 1 Del Webb monument sign, where relief is being requested in the areas of height, area, and illumination. 2 Carolina Riverside monument signs. These signs are proposed to be in compliance with our typical monument sign standards in the areas of size and illumination. So that's 32 square feet in area, 6 foot in height. And then 7 smaller village identification signs that would be a maximum of 6 square foot in area, 6 foot in height, which is typical for our arm sign regulation standards. And 1 wall sign which is specifically to a retaining wall. And our ordinance doesn't really outline specifications for signage attached to retaining walls, so this is for specifications to be defined in the clarified amendment request. So, again, we talked about in terms of sizing that a lot of the signs that are being proposed are in compliance with our ordinance standards. The number, however, is going to require relief. So, our maximum in our ordinance says that communities have a maximum of 2 neighborhood identification signs. They are proposing 10 plus a retaining wall sign, so they are asking for relief in that. In addition, they're asking for your consideration of relief in order to allow for their entrance monument sign. This is the proposed Del Webb identification sign mentioned earlier. The design of that sign is on your screen on the top, and it consists of retaining walls and The area that's being requested is 112 square foot in area. Again, our standard by ordinance is 32 square feet, but because of the retaining wall and location of the text on that sign, they're proposing a larger area for their monumentation sign. The location of this proposed sign is when you come into the entrance road that's directly across from Cimarron on Armstrong Ford Road. It will terminate into a cul-de-sac that would then lead to the South Fork Parkway, as shown on the screen in the box in red. Zoomed in, you can see that that would provide a direct line of sight from that entrance road to the monument sign proposed. The proposed signage height is 18 foot tall. That is to the top of the text, not to the top of that tower that you see. But towers in our sign ordinance are not included in the height definition of a sign. They are also seeking your consideration to allow for illumination of this sign in the form of reverse channel letter or backlit lighting, as well as some exterior uplighting. And again, there's only one of these proposed on the entire development. The other one specifically that would need your consideration for relief, and only because our ordinance doesn't specifically identify standards for retaining wall signage, is this one, and that is for a retaining wall located near the amenity center, but around the pond for retention there. And what they're proposing for your consideration is lettering that is not illuminated, but 6 foot tall in height as a maximum. And the location of the wall and the signage would be below street grade. And so it's staff's request that council receive staff's report, hear any public comment tonight, and then ultimately make a decision about whether or not the proposed signage for the Del Webb community can be added as a condition to the already approved conditions for the Del Webb project. And that is, there's specific language for your consideration as well included within that report. So I stand by for any comments or questions that you have, or I can move to a slide if you need to look at any other exhibits in more detail.
I have a question about the 18-foot tall part. I don't recall us ever allowing anything that tall. Am I not remembering correctly, or what is that? And the other piece of it, my concern there too, I remember when we went to the South Carolina site, I don't recall something that tall there, and I might not, it has been several years, so that concerns me the most.
Sure, so I would let the applicant speak to this in a little bit more detail, but my understanding is that the retaining walls will be built into the topography of the site in that location. And so again, the 18-foot would be measured from the at-grade condition to the top of the Del Webb sign, so that sign height is not the text alone, it's its location in relation to the street grade. As to the reasoning why it needs to be located there, I would defer to the applicant.
I believe in the report it states that there's no public safety concerns generated by any of these requests.
Yes, the request before you tonight has been routed to the police department, who's reviewed it in terms of sight lines and visibility, and they, after evaluation, have determined that there are no public safety concerns with the proposed signage.
Well, I'll just say for me, it's a question of scale. When we went to South Carolina and looked at it, if I remember correctly, that sign fronts what might be called a highway or a thoroughfare, and this is along a 2-lane road.
It will be, to clarify, along a 2-lane road on the entrance road, visible that way, but actually along the South Fork Parkway, which will be a 4-lane divided corridor.
I mean, I guess my second question is, these standards were in place at time of approval. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Does anybody look at them at time of approval?
A lot of times signage is looked at later. A lot of times with conditional zoning projects, you'll see a condition that's really more of a boilerplate that says signage will be permitted separately. And so now that the team has gotten their schematic design plans and they're working on their construction plan package, they're working out details like signage. And so that's how this request came before us. In working with their consultants, they've identified a need from their perspective for signage that exceeds our ordinance requirements and have asked for your consideration for these enhanced standards.
These other village identification signs, those are like signs for neighborhoods within the neighborhood?
That's right. So the best way that I can try to describe this is with the McLean development, there are many neighborhoods within the master McLean development. But in this community, there's proposed to be one HOA. And so these villages are villages within one master HOA as opposed to those being segmented out by neighborhood. And so that's why, because there's these multiple villages within one master HOA, they're asking to exceed the number of signs, because otherwise it may be broken out into multiples where our standards would be able to be achieved in that area.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you. And this is Melissa Oliver behind me. If you're ready for the applicant's presentation, or if you'd like her to wait until after public comment, so she's ready at your direction.
Is there any other public comment besides Melissa?
Okay.
Well then,
all right.
Let's hear from Melissa.
Perfect.
Hi, Council. Thank you for having me. Like Tiffany mentions, my name is Melissa Oliver. I'm the land planner and entitlements for Pulte Group Charlotte. And just a quick about Del Webb. We have multiple different types of products. Del Webb being one of them. This specific community is a upscale community that we give a lot of amenities to, and because it's just so up, I mean, it's 800 units, single family houses, and with that we always provide usually a Del Webb. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Carolina Orchards by any chance, but similar to that, they have a big monumentation signage at the close.
Is that
to
the one
front
in South Carolina, or?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And is it 18 feet high?
So what Tiffany mentioned is, if you take away this signage, like if you take away the text, we still have to have that retaining wall, those retaining walls, the tiered, because of the grade. So even if this was not part of the signage, if you take the tower away, the text away, that tiered wall system, we still need.
And how tall is the wall itself then?
It's a total, all the way to the text is 18. So from road grade, from down to road grade to this wall is about 18.
Okay, so I guess the question that Martha's asking, the actual wall, it's like not from the base to the top of the Del Webb, but like the wall itself. Like Mount Everest is 29,000 feet, but the actual mountain is not 29,000 feet. It starts like way up here, and that's I think what we're trying to get at.
Yeah, because 18 feet is a scary sounding number if you're looking at it. Okay, but if it's your retaining wall, is it because of the topography there that you're talking about? The retaining wall has to be that high. Mm-hmm. Okay, because obviously we're not there to see it, so that makes it really difficult.
And this is pretty close to what it's going to be like material taken away. So this is 8 feet.
Okay.
So that top one is 8 feet. Okay. If that helps. And then this one doesn't show it. That it says it in the. It shows in the picture. 2.5 feet, about falls 4 feet from grade there. 8 feet from there, and we're gonna have landscaping in between. And then this tower is about 21 feet from here.
And that tower is decorative only?
It is.
Okay.
Like Tiffany mentioned, we just hired a sign consultant yesterday, and we didn't make it that far in design after we started construction documents, and we're just getting to it now, so we do apologize. Okay. And it is at the end of the boulevard that we designed and installed and constructing off of Armstrong Ford Road, so it is, way off the main road. But this boulevard will be dedicated to the city of Belmont, not NCDOT.
I'm a little curious as to why you need a sign on a retaining wall.
So that is optional. We don't want to have to do this again. Come back to you guys for something as small as that. So our main amenities is one of the factors with this community. We put in a lot of effort in. We're having a whole bunch of pickleball courts. We're doing a memorial. We're doing area for food trucks. Big pool, grill station, big indoor and outdoor amenity spaces. And the amenity is right next to a required detention pond. That pond is below grade. And you're just going to, sit by the pool or play pickleball, and you just see this big blank retaining wall, and it's just empty and bare. What we're looking for is the option to install text on it, just to, something a little bit more pleasing to the eye, and you don't just see this big retaining wall. The exact design hasn't been vetted like this. We just want the option so we don't have to come back to you and waste anyone's time on something as, well, I think as small as that. But, and we're doing the option to have max 6 foot in height. We're not saying it's going to be 6 foot in height. However, it's, could, the wall is going to be from here to that building over there, and 6 feet isn't really that big in text that you're going to be able to see. So that's why we're asking for that relief.
And does that same principle apply to that sign, that it's you're asking for up to 18 feet? Is there a possibility it might not be that, or are you more certain of the numbers with that?
So the retaining aspect, because we have vetted the design on that. Now the 18 feet is pretty set. Now the actual size of the text, that's not 18 feet.
Mm-hmm.
That will probably be, actually will probably be closer to 6 feet. The actual text, the Del Webb text.
Okay.
And I had one more thing. I think Tiffany did cover it. And this, the 112 square feet, 18 foot tall. It could be less than that. We're asking for, that being close to the max. And obviously, I think everything's going through planning approval. This is just, and they're going to vet it.
She is way taller than I, so I apologize. So a couple points of clarification that seem to come up, and I just wanted to call your attention to them, is the plan view is in the bottom portion of your screen there. And so on the elevations, it looks like those retaining walls may be, pushed together in one full 18-foot wall, but that's not what's being proposed. You can see the topography lines if you look a little bit closer on the screen, and how those walls would be formed within the topography needs for the development. So they are proposed as 3 separate and separated walls in distance here. So this wall that Melissa was speaking to is the one that's 8 foot tall here. But when we measure signage, we measure from at street grade here. So the 18 feet is from this point all the way up to this point. So just to clarify that. And then I believe that was my main point of clarification there. So if there was any other questions, but I did just want to point out that both of those designs work in conjunction with one another in terms of what's presented for the entrance line.
Anybody have any other questions?
Just to make sure, with regard to lighting, there's no request to change or ask for any situation there. You're compliant with what we have with regard to lighting. Is that correct or not?
No, that's not correct. So on this sign specifically, they are asking for the ability to provide reverse channel letters behind the Del Webb logo.
Mm-hmm.
That is, in this location only, the request for illumination is being made. For the other signs, they are proposing to install them based off of our existing sign standards. We tried to really be intentional about targeting where the illumination was needed for signage and when it could be eliminated throughout the community, as it is a residential community.
I guess then I would like your opinion, Tiffany, because we're talking about an entrance to Belmont. It's basically what this is. And so I want to make sure that it is aesthetically pleasing and the lighting is not too garish and that kind of thing. So looking at this, I don't know that. So you're going to have to give us your opinion about what that looks like to you.
Sure. So staff wanted to make sure that we had safeguards in place as well. And that's why one of the conditions is to propose that a master sign program with more detail would be provided to planning prior to any of the signs being permitted. So that would go beyond what's provided in your packet, which is just a location approximation for what their needs are. And that would go into the specifics of how bright that illumination is, the signage styles for all of that, as well as that retaining wall signage to make sure it's cohesive and consistent with our aesthetic for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Anybody else have any other comments? Have a motion to come out of public hearing?
Motion to come out of public hearing.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Consider the adoption of an ordinance approving Del Webb Carolina Riverside Development signage. A request to add a condition of relief for the approved Del Webb retirement community known as the Carolina Riverside off Armstrong Road to allow for flexibility in the standards for a neighborhood identification signage.
I'll move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good.
I would also move to find that this request is a reasonable request in the public interest because of the scale of the development and its signage needs for residents and visitors, and is consistent with the community character goal of the comprehensive land use plan.
Amen.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Reports.
You have reports from 5 advisory boards included in your package, minutes of their most recent meetings for your information. For the interim manager's report, mostly just I wanted to review a few dates of upcoming meetings. As far as your next official meeting, that would be 2 weeks from tonight, Monday the 15th, for your May workshop, which will be targeted for a budget review, and that will hopefully be the only item for that agenda, if we can limit it to that, so you can focus on the budget. Aside from that, I think we sent out information this Friday, May 5th and 11th. The Chamber's hosting several local legislative delegates in their offices, if anyone were interested to register for that. Beyond that, you also received information that Tiffany provided regarding a proposed tour for Gaston County officials of the Little Sugar Creek Greenway in Charlotte on Friday, June the 2nd. This tour lasts most of the day. It leaves from this building at 8 in the morning. They're looking to limit that to 2 representatives per jurisdiction to have everybody be able to ride on the one bus. So if we have any of you that would like to attend, if you'll just let Tiffany know to schedule you for that.
Want to go on that tour?
We'll look at that. I need to look at the schedule.
Okay, that's Friday, June 2nd.
Okay.
And then also you've received the notification for the groundbreaking ceremony for the Stowe Regional Facility on Wednesday, June 9th. That's at 9 a.m. Also, just as a reminder, you each received an email from Kevin about scheduling budget sessions to go over some of the proposed budget information prior to the workshop, so you'll have some lead-in going into that session. The final thing, I was just going to mention this. I know we've had a lot of meetings lately, but in trying to limit the May workshop to budget, I wanted to just gauge if council has any appetite for an additional workshop during May. We've had a couple other items that we've postponed in the past. One, there had been a request to hold off on the Main Street work program to put that into a work session. There was also a report I know that the Environmental Sustainability Board wanted to bring to you. So things of that nature we could target for a separate workshop if you all were open to looking at a date in May for doing that.
Well,
that doesn't help you. I know.
Anything after May 18th is probably not going to be feasible.
Are we able to do it, kick it to June? The only reason why I say that is because of the busy schedule. I have enjoyed seeing you all every week,
yes.
But we have
and sometimes more than once.
Yeah, sometimes more than once a week.
And my husband actually commented, you guys are having a lot of meetings. I said, yeah, we sure are.
Given that the new budget years won't start till July 1, I would think if we could work that into early June, that should work. Okay. So we'll just look at that. And that was the other. I knew there was something else related to boards. I remember.
That's right.
So we're trying to do that at 2 separate meetings, so they have 2 opportunities.
Okay.
We have a workshop. It is the 15th at 4.
This month, yes.
Yeah.
That will be a budget workshop.
Yeah, the budget.
And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Let's start out with Mark.
Yes, I'd like to kind of continue the conversation we had last time around this environmental study as regards current projects. I know that there was some public comment on that today. Just kind of like to know where we stand on what is being required. If there's anything else that we're requiring, like, I guess that's really a staff question. I guess there were some questions during public comment about whether we are or are not requiring an environmental study for the Henry's Chapel project.
Sure, so our ordinance outlines the requirements.
Yep, we can all hear.
Sure, so when staff determines whether or not the applicant has met the standard of environmental survey, we are referring to Chapter 16's definition of environmental survey in Section 16.5. And so the items that make up that environmental survey are defined within that section. It is our understanding that the information either has been provided and or is in process by the development team to make up the components of that environmental survey. So, for instance, the environmental survey at the time that the project became vested back in 2017 did note that for schematic plans, a survey showing the location of all freestanding open-grown or field-grown specimen trees with the diameter breast height of 12 inches or larger located in the tree-safe area is required. That's an item that's in progress because the process that they are going through right now is updating their schematic plans in preparation for review. So that is the one that's still in progress. The other items that were required at the time of sketch plan by the ordinance, it is staff's opinion, have been fulfilled based off of the requirements as outlined in our LDC.
That's 16.5?
Yes.
Now, I know there's another item in there called an environmental impact study.
That's correct.
So what is the status of that or
Sure.
the applicability thereof?
Sure. So staff received direction at your last council meeting to work with planning board to determine if an environmental impact statement pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 113A should be deemed necessary for the subject site. The planning board reviewed this item at their April 27th meeting and determined that it was not deemed necessary based off of their analysis and based off of our ordinance standards as required by the General Statute of 113A.
And to clarify that
it wasn't deemed necessary because our ordinance doesn't comply with state law.
That's correct.
Right.
What provision of it is not?
Two or three things. One, that it is not has not been applied consistently. The planning board found that it had not been applied consistently, that the statute requires that. Hadn't required it on Del Webb or McLean or River Mist or any other project in ever. So that failed. Second, the ordinance doesn't have any minimum criteria standards set out in order to judge whether or not the threshold is met, and so that environmental impact study could be required. So we don't have any standards. And so the ordinance is not in compliance with state law, they determined, and I would agree with that. And Councilman Heffron was there and agreed
I was, yes.
with that.
Yes. I'm constrained to agree.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've heard some very real concerns raised about. I'm just wondering how we as a city respond to that. Maybe
They said they didn't want to give the impression they weren't concerned about environmental situations out there. It's just that we have an ordinance that doesn't, it requires them to make a finding that they couldn't make, that they, planning board, deemed it necessary. It's an unusual provision in our ordinance. It's the only time I've ever seen where the city council doesn't make that decision. The planning board is relegated with that authority.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So to that note, just to double check, so that means that the council cannot intervene and mandate that happen?
Our ordinance doesn't provide for that. It provides that the planning board has to make that determination. That is deemed critical.
Are we working on updating it to get it up to code into standards of the state statutes? I know it wouldn't apply in this case considering it's grandfathered in, but that's probably something pertinent for the future.
The planning board did mention that. and say that that's what they wanted to see. I mean, because I'm assuming parks can be drafted in such a way that it complies with the statute.
Well, there was an enabling statute,
criteria.
I think, that it referenced. I forget which one.
I think that was the one that 113A, that was the one that we were.
That's the statute.
Yeah.
Okay.
113A8.
And staff at your direction can begin working on that amendment. It would apply to any new development applications filed after the date of adoption.
And I would suggest if we do that we would then need to apply it consistently as the statute says. So, yeah.
I agree. I wasn't here prior. I think it should have been applied prior.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Mark?
No.
Okay, Martha?
I know we're looking at budget May 15th, but could we get an update on whether we have ordered the riser and that kind of thing so we can have a dais up here? Because I know we had talked about that prior to this. With regard to Keep Belmont Beautiful, we are losing Wendy Calton. She has parental responsibilities, and so we will be looking at hiring someone at this point for that position. The other piece of this, though, Belmont has been very fortunate to have Keep Belmont Beautiful. They have taken on more than normal responsibilities here, and so I think we either need to look at adding to that position or having Carlton Rouse, who's kind of managed our park, Stowe Park, to make sure everything is staying top rate, A class, that kind of thing. And I've talked to Ron Folk a bit about talking to Carlton about whether he would consider managing our parks, in that we need to have somebody watching out about the trees and inspecting so that we know what needs to happen, whether we're properly fertilizing and mulching. And our Parks and Rec Center, we're oriented toward recreation, not parks management. And we have so many parks now, we're going to need to look at maintaining what we have. So as we look at the budget, we may need to add something for Carlton. I don't know how much we're paying him, but if he's interested in doing that, he would probably be the best candidate because he has the knowledge. So think about that. And as I said, we're very fortunate to have Wendy. So she was very sad to leave us, and we were very sad for her to leave because she's done an excellent job. She's not here for us to say that. The last thing is I've had a number of citizens tell me of concerns about golf carts, and I talked to Chief Falls, and Lindsay's given me some information I'll review. But we have people who are out after dark. We have underage drivers. We have people who are drinking. We have people who are very concerned about possible accidents, that kind of thing, and near misses that we've had. So we're going to have to figure out how to address that. And I'm thinking, for one thing, we may need to communicate through our social media to put it in a positive light that we want to make sure everybody is safe, that kind of thing. So maybe Jamie could look at putting something together, because people are taking advantage of the situation and it's dangerous. So we don't want anything to happen to anybody, and people are just not careful. As I've said to my students before, if we all went by the rules, we wouldn't need to have speed limits, nor would we need to have patrolmen. But in this situation, it's the same kind of thing. I've been scared a couple of times at night going into my own neighborhood. So we're going to need to look at, what we need to do, look at the fine structures, how that needs to happen. So that's all for me.
You guys both. Thank you. All right, I don't have anything. Jim?
Yes, a couple things. Barry mentioned the Main Street work plan at a future workshop, because I was wondering where that had disappeared to. More importantly, I've got some questions about the upcoming opening of the rec center. I'm a bit baffled or confused as to how access is going to work. I haven't really heard anything. I haven't been able to attend the Parks and Rec Board meeting. Maybe, I don't know.
We have a committee that's working on that.
But I'm more concerned about, just, because I get asked this by residents and future Belmont residents as well. Well, how does this work? Is it free? Because we've talked and said, well, it's free for residents, but you need a membership and you have to pay for the membership. So I don't understand how memberships work. I don't understand if there's going to be any cost to residents. I don't understand if we're going to allow non-residents in for a fee. And if we're going to approve any sorts of fees, I would assume that we need to vote on that. And as I've been told, there's a grand opening on June 3rd, and yet no fees no fee structure has come to us for a vote. So I'm just baffled as to how all of this is going to work.
And you're correct. And the other thing is we need to look at some items maybe in May 15th, and we could look at those because the budget for the actual opening may not be sufficient to do what we'd like to do. So we may need to look at that as well.
Well, to go back to Jim's first question, I also imagine that would require purchasing like some sort of system to
Yes.
like do the cards or the key tags or whatever.
Yeah. And I apologize if this has been addressed at Parks and Rec board meetings that I haven't been able to attend, but like anything that requires our approval, well, the time is running out for us to approve it.
So we brought that up at the opening party planning meeting because there was conversation about are they going to sell, like have somebody there to process memberships, that kind of stuff. And they are hoping to get it on the May 15th agenda on the fee schedule for your approval. And there is going to be a, I don't know, Zip isn't here, is he? No. I know there's going to be some sort of system because they have me designing a key fob.
Okay.
People can scan like you have at the YMCA.
Right. Yep.
So I do know that there's some sort of system being put in place for that.
And there was like I know we saw at the retreat like a draft policies and procedures manual. Has that been finalized?
Not that I'm aware of. That was at draft form when you guys last saw it, and I believe you have to approve it. So.
Well, yeah, all right. I hope it's ready soon. Yeah.
I can't answer that one.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for the party.
Yes. Well.
So is Parks and Rec like is somebody accountable for this?
Zip has been working on the policy and
Okay.
procedures, and Laura was working with Zip on the finalized piece for the
Okay.
So, sorry, Jim.
Oh,
So to Jim's point, though, can we put a clock on this and say we need all this by May 15th?
Let's put a clock on this and say we need every.
To Jim's point, if we don't get this May 15th,
Yeah.
I mean,
so maybe the clock now. I mean, May 15th, we need all that.
Yes, and we can talk about the budget for the party at that point too. I'm happy to do that. Let's see. I did want to bring up something else before I'm done, because I talked to all of you at various points about the ABC board considering a second location, which is in its nascent stages. They just wanted to gauge our opinions to see whether we were adamantly opposed to it. Obviously, we need to see all the specifics, but I have heard from Brian Burns, the chair of the ABC board, and in order to go through with to continue that process, they need me or need it to be read into the record at the meeting here that it is the intention of the Belmont ABC board to save for capital improvements as it relates to the expansion of another Belmont ABC store. And that is part of their requirements as dictated by the state to enable them to do that and explore the possibility of expanding. So I do that for that reason and appreciate you all indulging that.
Can you send me that?
I will, yes. I'm happy to do that. And beyond that, I just want to welcome our new city manager, Miles Braswell, and I hope you've figured out what you're in for now. We are an acquired taste.
Well, he's still here.
Yes, you are still here. So that gives me some hope. You've now seen us in action, but we're really glad that you're here, and we're excited to work with you and move the city forward and just get going on making Belmont a better place. And I do want to thank Barry and all of our staff for holding down the fort during this transition period, and hope that the transition will be as seamless as possible. I don't know how much of a grace period you're going to get based on some things that are coming down the pike, but we're happy to have you here, and we're really ready to go and get started on the Miles Braswell administration. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I'll lead off with echoing that. Welcome, Miles. Glad to have you here in Belmont. Thank you. I am distressed about the opening of this facility for the reasons that you all expressed. somebody needs to get a fire built under them to get the staffing and the fee schedules. We've got a $13.5, $14 million building out there, and I don't think we've quite nailed down the grand opening process for this building. And like you all said, the clock is running. We've got one shot to go ahead and make all these approvals on whatever recommendations come forward, and that is May 15th. So we need to make sure that whatever we need to have in front of us is in front of us on May 15th. So we can go ahead and open this thing like we should. I would also like to extend my condolences to the family of Belmont Police Officer Lieutenant Dewey Duncan. He served this city for 35 years, I believe from 1963 to 1998. 35 years of service, and as I found out recently, he also served in the reserves, I think with Gaston County, bringing his total service to 50 years. That's a remarkable record. And again, that's part of our Belmont family, so my condolences to his family, to the Belmont Police Department, all who knew him. The bathrooms at Stowe Park look great. I had the opportunity to go in and review them, let's say. And I was
Maddie told me you were polling people outside.
That's not weird. I polled a couple of people on what they thought, and it was a great improvement. There was an initial plan to tear that building down, raise it to the ground, and start over. I think we made the right call in just restructuring the interior. We saved a lot of money. One thing I did notice while I was there, we've got a street light in Stowe Park that has been strobing for some time. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it drives me crazy when I see that light continually just strobing, the strobing effect. Someone had mentioned to me that for our events in Stowe Park, we may want to reach out to the Abbey players. We've always tried to find a way to incorporate Belmont Abbey into the city of Belmont. The Abbey players doing short segments of their plays or skits might be a good way to integrate them and introduce them to Belmont at large and stir up some interest in their campus and people visiting the campus. That's been a goal for a long time. Something, and I'll try to be brief, but something on a little bit of a more serious note. I went to the Planning and Zoning meeting, and I will agree to disagree with the verdict on that. I mean, for me, this speaks directly to the health and well-being, not only of the citizens of Belmont, but to our community and to the water. This is a critical watershed, and I am really frustrated to find that we are constrained in taking action to move forward on this by simple verbiage, a lack of oversight, and the fact that it has not been employed before. Now, they will argue that we are targeting, but precedent has to begin somewhere. That's the whole concept behind precedent. Now, if we had done this with Seven Oaks, we would have been accused of the same thing. You're targeting us. If we had done it with Del Webb, the same thing. You are targeting us. But we can't let that stop us. I mean, we are charged with the oversight and the well-being of this community. And I've got some really serious concerns about the water quality and what's going to happen with this. And I feel like if there is a way to move forward with any kind of environmental, we need to exercise that. I mean, to the citizens of Belmont, I want to say I exercised all the due diligence that was available to us and maybe beyond that and pushed it a little. So I'm really frustrated with that decision. I'm not a lawyer. I am disappointed to see that we are compelled to adhere to their advice on this. It looks like we're fine with our tree save. That part of the ordinance has been satisfied. That is a big deal, but this water quality is a whole lot more important to this community. The trees will grow back. We mess up our water supply, and we've got real problems. We've experienced that with Duke Power. People have called this potential Duke Power 2.0. It may be a very real possibility. It may not. I can't speak to that. I'm not an expert, but I can't express to you. I'm usually low-key and understated, and I am really distraught over this decision and our inability to address it.
And if I may, I just want to, I share a lot of your distress, but I want to make sure that our distress is focused to where it should be, which is, however the development code was written and presented, I think that's the issue, and I'm not sure where that provision came from or how long it's been there, but I want to say, at least from my perspective, the planning board made the only decision that they were able to make based on the land development code as written and the statute as it's on the books. So I don't want to be seen, we can be upset about the decision that was made, but I think that was the only decision that the planning board could make, and I'd be hesitant to sort of call them on the carpet or anything like that. I too wish the outcome had been better, but I'm not sure what else they could do based on the code as written. So let's focus our energies.
We're not the only entity with responsibility for environmental management of the river, because
well, yeah. So this only applies to the environmental impact statement. All the other watershed rules are in place and will have to be complied with. Our watershed, Jerry usually monitors all our watershed rules. You are the watershed administrative board. All those will have to be complied with. Anything that's in the critical or protective areas in the watershed, all those rules are in place and have to be, adhered to. An environmental survey has to be adhered to. That's what Tiffany was talking about. This only applies to that environmental impact statement requirement. And the other protections that was pointed out, the planning board, all the permitting, there's water quality, anything, all the environmental permitting processes that are in place for the state to protect these various segments of the development, if approved, would have to be complied with. So there's a whole series of separate permits hurdles that have to be adhered to. So this isn't, you're not caving in on environmental. It's just one statement that.
Well, let me just add to what you said. I mean, I'm not trying to lay this at the feet of the Planning and Zoning Board, where they are constrained. Likewise, we are constrained. What this may speak to is a different problem. I mean, we have gone over and over our ordinances, and we have had so many text amendments in my tenure, I can't recall them, but we're not looking maybe at the ones we need to look at. I mean, this is in there, and it hasn't been exercised, which means nobody has been looking at it, because we've had major developments where this may have qualified before. So when we need to roll this out, it hasn't been addressed. I mean, we've talked about trees, and we've talked a lot of beautification and so on and so forth, but this has real meat, real meaning, and real merit to the city. And when we try to draw that weapon or that pistol or that tool, we find out you can't pull that from your holster. You are not compliant with state statute. That's problematic that we've got codes that aren't compatible with state statute. If we're going to be looking at anything, we need to look at the tools that we need.
I don't disagree. This is under a 2017 version of our code. There's been changes to it since then. But, nobody really, I'm not really sure how far back this iteration goes. It's only just one little sentence in the whole code, so.
And I mean, I agree with a lot of what Richard says. I'm happy to explore, any options, including, at the county level or the state level, what have you. It's just, and I agree with what Richard said, we have gone above and beyond, it was just one provision, and we tried to make use of this provision, and I commend us for doing so. And unfortunately, based on the way it was written and the statute, that door doesn't seem to be a viable one to go through. But there might be other ways to address these environmental concerns. I think we would all agree and hope.
Yeah, I agree.
That's all I have.
Hello. I also echo, of course, with the conversation happening here. Obviously, we do need to maintain our waterways. Of course, I'm a big user of them and enjoy them on the weekends. But, you know, that is the appeal on what sells the city of Belmont. So that is an important thing to discuss. I'll be quick. I just have a few things just to kind of rattle off. A few residents have brought this up to me. I've seen it on social media kind of floating around on more of a lighter note. Do we know when we're going to be able to fix the clock downtown Belmont, or if it?
So I responded to somebody the other day, so just to give everybody a background. There's very few people that actually can fix those clocks. Mm-hmm. They're incredibly rare, and we were working with someone before the pandemic to have it fixed, and then he passed away during the pandemic, unfortunately. He had to travel, I believe he was from Michigan, I'm not 100% sure. So Alec had to find a new person, and he's been working with that person to order the parts to fix the clock. And so that's where we're at right now. Barry, did you authorize? He said he needed you to authorize.
Yeah, we talked about that, and there was no reason not to proceed with that. So I understood that he was going ahead with that.
And there's some situation, if I recall correctly, correct me if I'm not correct, that each face of that clock has a different mechanism that has to be dealt with. It's not just one something that's controlling all four sides. So it's much more complicated than what I had thought.
Yeah, there's literally components for each side. So when people say that the different sides are different times, it's because the mechanisms inside are separate for every single phase of the clock.
Yep.
And so that we had to order parts, pretty much the whole interior for the clock, we had to order parts for it. And the city will be reimbursed through Jonathan Taylor's Family Foundation. They have an endowment for the clock.
Okay.
And so we'll be reimbursed for it, but Alec is working on getting it fixed.
Did Jonathan Taylor have that?
I don't know. His family just put it.
They donated it.
Neely Dixon's family donated that clock.
Neely Dixon's family did.
The land for the clock. I don't know about
Did you coach them too?
No. Just to kind of go down this list so we can close out. Bill or Barry, can we look into that, or potentially something that we can look at and discuss with council in regards to the penalty fees and the water fees that were mentioned in the public comment? Because I do think that's actually probably appropriate to look at, especially if it's just continuing to rack up. I don't know if there's a way to say of an outlier on an average 12-month basis, you're spending X, and then all of a sudden you peaked up. If we can do an automation that sends out a note or something like that. But I just think that might be
supposed to do that, right?
But we do it.
Yeah, I got a notice.
if you're signed up for the system,
Yeah,
it'll send you an email.
that I had
Gotcha.
a spigot on the side of the house that had been turned on by someone other than me, and I mean, I was able to figure it out and turn it off because of the alerts. I was not able to get my bill reduced, but but yes.
Cool. Okay, well, I just wanted to confirm that, and then we haven't had that issue happen. Something that a couple of people have brought up to me, maybe this is more directed towards the Main Street Board, potentially allowing vendors to set up in the park and applying for permits, one being kind of, let's say, a food stand of some sort or something like that. I had a couple of people bring that up to me. I didn't think that was a bad idea. I didn't know if there was a route forward to review that, just a kind of a thought. Again, first of all, thank you, Barry. Really appreciate everything you've done for us. I appreciate our conversations. You've definitely been that steady hand to get us through it. Miles, I'm very, very ecstatic for you. I'm looking forward to working with you, and I think you'll do wonders for the city of Belmont. And of course, I would like to say welcome home. And the last thing I would also like to kind of echo what Richard said in regards to Dewey and Dewey's service. He was also a brother Mason and had done a lot for this community, not just with the city of Belmont, not just with the county, but also in non-for-profit and for the community as well. So I do want to also kind of recognize him tonight. Sorry, one more thing. Gastonia did pass this, and I think it would be interesting. I am still not personally in favor of it, but I would like for our team to reach out and discuss what the social district looks like in downtown Gastonia. Again, just to say I'm not personally in favor of it. But-
Main Street has been working on it, so
Okay.
it's gonna.
So I would like to
yeah.
listen to the information provided from that. And that is all I have. Thank you.
We want to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.